What if I told you that the person you could become is dying a little bit every day you hit the snooze button? Before we dive into today's story, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Are you in New York, London, Australia, or somewhere completely different? Let's see how far this message reaches. Now, let me tell you about a man who learned the hardest lesson of his life. James Carter was 23 years old when he decided that tomorrow would be good enough. He lived in a cramped apartment in downtown Seattle, where the rain matched his mood most days. His alarm clock screamed at 5:30 every morning, but James had perfected the art of the snooze button. Just 10 more minutes, he'd tell himself. Those minutes always turned into hours. James worked at a small graphic design firm, a job he'd stumbled into after college. His boss, Mr. Patterson, was a stern man who believed in discipline and dedication. James believed in doing just enough to get by. While his colleagues stayed late perfecting their presentations, James clocked out exactly at 5. Why work harder when you could work smarter, he reasoned. His apartment was littered with half-finished projects and abandoned dreams. There was a girl named Sarah who worked on the same floor. She had auburn hair that caught the sunlight streaming through the office windows, and a smile that made James's heart skip. He'd promised himself he'd ask her out for 6 months straight. Tomorrow, he always thought, tomorrow I'll be more confident. Tomorrow I'll have my act together. Tomorrow never came, and Sarah remained a beautiful stranger across the office. James's best friend from college, David, was different. David woke up at 4:30 every morning to work on his startup before his day job. He read books on business strategy, attended networking events, and saved 30% of every paycheck. James would laugh at David's intensity. "You're going to burn out, man," he'd say, cracking open another beer. David would just smile and keep working on his laptop. One Thursday evening, James received an email that would change everything. His company was launching a competition for a senior designer position. The winner would receive a $50,000 raise and lead the creative team. All employees had to do was submit a portfolio of their best work within 3 months. James felt a surge of excitement. This was his chance. He'd start working on it this weekend. That weekend came and went. James told himself he needed to relax first, to recharge his creative batteries. He binge-watched an entire season of a new show instead. The following weekend, he went to a friend's birthday party. The weekend after that, he was too hungover to be productive. 3 months felt like forever. There was plenty of time. The deadline seemed like a distant star in a galaxy far away. Meanwhile, David's startup was gaining traction. He'd secured his first major client and was featured in a local business magazine. James felt a twinge of something uncomfortable in his chest when he saw the article. Was it jealousy? No, he told himself. David just got lucky. James pushed the feeling down and ordered another pizza. His own dreams could wait. There was a new video game he wanted to try. 2 months passed in a blur of Netflix, takeout, and empty promises to himself. James would sit at his desk some evenings, staring at a blank screen, willing himself to start the portfolio. But his bed looked so comfortable. His phone was so entertaining. Starting felt overwhelming, like trying to climb a mountain in flip-flops. So he didn't start. He just kept scrolling, kept watching, kept waiting. One night, James ran into Sarah at a coffee shop. She was with someone, a tall man in a business suit who made her laugh the way James had always dreamed of doing. They looked happy, comfortable, like 2 puzzle pieces that fit perfectly together. James ordered his coffee and left quickly, feeling something crack inside his chest. He'd waited too long. Tomorrow had become yesterday, and yesterday was gone forever. With only 3 weeks left until the competition deadline, panic finally set in. James tried to pull together his portfolio, but years of mediocre work stared back at him from his computer screen. He had nothing exceptional to show. Every design looked rushed, uninspired, half-hearted. He'd been coasting for so long that he'd forgotten how to run. The mountain he'd ignored was now an impossible cliff face. James worked frantically those last weeks, surviving on energy drinks and desperation. He barely slept, trying to create in 20 days what should have taken 90. His eyes burned. His back ached. His mind felt like static. He submitted his portfolio at 11:58 on the deadline night, 2 minutes before it closed. It wasn't good. He knew it wasn't good, but it was all he had to offer. The announcement came on a rainy Tuesday morning. James sat at his desk, hands trembling as he opened the company-wide email. The winner was Jenny Rodriguez, a young designer who'd been with the company for only 18 months. Her portfolio was stunning, innovative, breathtaking. James felt sick. Jenny had used her 3 months wisely. Every evening, every weekend, she'd poured her soul into her work. That afternoon, Mr. Patterson called James into his office. The older man's face was kind but firm. "James, you have talent," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "But talent without discipline is like a car without fuel. It looks good sitting in the driveway, but it won't take you anywhere." James nodded, unable to meet his boss's eyes. The truth hurt more than any criticism ever could. A week later, David called James with exciting news. His startup had been acquired by a major tech company for $2 million. David was moving to San Francisco to run a new division. 5 years of early mornings, sacrificed weekends, and relentless discipline had paid off. James congratulated his friend, his voice hollow. After hanging up, he sat in his apartment, surrounded by the evidence of his wasted time. That night, James couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, doing math in his head. If he'd worked just 2 hours every evening for 3 months, that would have been 180 hours. 180 hours to change his life. Instead, he'd spent those hours watching shows he'd already forgotten, playing games that meant nothing, scrolling through feeds that left him empty. The cost of laziness was suddenly crystal clear. James thought about all the tomorrows he'd promised himself. Tomorrow I'll start exercising. Tomorrow I'll learn that new skill. Tomorrow I'll call my parents. Tomorrow I'll save money. Tomorrow I'll ask her out. Tomorrow I'll chase my dreams. But tomorrow was a liar, a seductive whisper that kept him paralyzed in an endless present. Tomorrow had stolen his life while he wasn't paying attention. He remembered his grandfather, who'd passed away 2 years earlier. The old man used to say, "James, time is the only currency you can't earn back. Spend it like you're already in debt." James had nodded and smiled, but he'd never really listened. Now those words echoed in his mind like a funeral bell. His grandfather had understood something James was only now beginning to grasp. The following Monday, James made a decision. He woke up at 5 in the morning, his alarm sounding like a battle cry. His body protested, begging for sleep, but he pushed through. He went for a run, his lungs burning in the cold morning air. It hurt. Everything hurt. But underneath the pain was something else, something he hadn't felt in years. It was possibility. It was hope. It was the first step. James started small. 1 hour every evening dedicated to improving his design skills. No excuses, no negotiations. Some nights he wanted to quit. His friends would text him to hang out, and he'd feel the old pull of distraction. But he remembered the email announcing Jenny's victory. He remembered David's success. Most of all, he remembered the crushing weight of his own regret. That memory kept him going. 3 months later, James had built a new portfolio from scratch. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than anything he'd ever created. He started freelancing on weekends, taking small projects to build his reputation. The money wasn't much at first, but it wasn't about the money. It was about proving to himself that he could follow through, that tomorrow could finally become today. 6 months after the competition, another opportunity arose. A major advertising agency in the city was hiring. James applied, his new portfolio leading with his strongest work. The interview was intense, but James was prepared. He'd spent countless hours practicing, studying, improving. When the job offer came 2 weeks later, James sat in his apartment and cried. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. He'd almost missed this moment entirely. At his new job, James met someone named Lisa. She was a copywriter with a quick wit and infectious laugh. This time, James didn't wait. He asked her out after their second project together. She said yes. They went to a small Italian restaurant downtown, and James realized something profound. Confidence didn't come from waiting until you felt ready. It came from doing things when you were scared, when you were unprepared, when you were uncertain. James started mentoring younger designers, sharing his story openly. He didn't hide his failures or sugarcoat his regrets. "I wasted 3 years of my life waiting for tomorrow," he'd tell them. "Don't make my mistake. The person you want to become doesn't exist in the future. You have to build that person today, right now, with every choice you make." Some listened, some didn't. James understood. He'd once been the one who didn't listen. A year after joining the agency, James received a message from Sarah. She'd seen his work featured in a design magazine and wanted to congratulate him. They met for coffee, and James learned she'd broken up with the business suit guy months ago. There was a second chance here, but James had learned his lesson. He didn't wait. He didn't hesitate. He asked if she'd like to have dinner sometime. She smiled and said yes. Looking back, James could see how every lazy choice had compounded. Each skipped morning, each abandoned project, each postponed dream had built a prison of mediocrity around him. But he also learned that the opposite was true. Every disciplined choice, every uncomfortable effort, every present moment action built a bridge to the life he wanted. The path was simple, but simple didn't mean easy. It never would be. David visited from San Francisco, and the two friends sat in James's new apartment, much nicer than the old one. "You're different," David observed, sipping his coffee. James nodded. "I learned the hard way that lazy today doesn't just mean regret tomorrow. It means regret for every tomorrow after that. Until you decide to change. Until you decide that today matters more than comfort." David smiled. "Better late than never, brother." James still struggled sometimes. There were mornings when the snooze button called his name like a siren song. There were evenings when Netflix felt more appealing than personal growth. The difference was that now James understood what was at stake. Every moment of laziness wasn't just stolen time. It was a stolen future, a stolen possibility, a stolen version of himself that deserved to exist. 5 years after that fateful competition, James ran his own design studio. He had 12 employees, all young and hungry, all chasing their dreams with the kind of intensity James had once mocked. He was engaged to Lisa, had saved enough for a down payment on a house, and felt genuinely proud when he looked in the mirror. The man staring back was someone he'd built, one difficult day at a time. If James could go back and talk to his 23-year-old self, he'd say this: "Every lazy today becomes a painful tomorrow, and those tomorrows pile up until you're drowning in regret, wondering where your life went." But here's the good news. Right now, in this exact moment, you have the power to choose differently. You can't change yesterday, but you can decide that today, this today, will be the first brick in the life you deserve. Stop waiting. Start building. Because tomorrow isn't promised, but today is here. What will you do with it?